The Galactic Council chamber hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 different species gathered for what many considered the most important session in millennia. The massive crystalline structure orbiting the neutral moon of Kepler 442c had witnessed countless diplomatic meetings, trade negotiations, and territorial disputes, but nothing quite like this. Ambassador Zeth Carey of the Veltar hegemony adjusted his ceremonial breathing apparatus, the blue-tinted gases swirling around his elongated skull as he reviewed the data tablets before him. Each piece of information seemed more impossible than the last. The humans, these newcomer mammals from a backwater planet called Earth, had somehow managed to defeat 3 separate Korthak raiding fleets using nothing but primitive kinetic weapons and what could only be described as suicidal tactics. "The preliminary reports must be wrong," muttered Chancellor Vrina, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's soft lighting into prismatic patterns across the walls. The Silthrini were known throughout the galaxy for their analytical minds and cautious nature. They had survived for over 50,000 years by carefully calculating every risk, every potential threat. The idea that a species they had classified as barely spacefaring could pose any significant military challenge was absurd. Dr. Yulmesh, the Kethmori xenobiologist, tapped his 6-fingered hands against the smooth surface of his workstation. His people were among the galaxy's most respected researchers, having cataloged and studied thousands of sentient species across dozens of star systems. "I've reviewed the biological scans of these humans 17 times. Their physical capabilities are unremarkable. Standard mammalian bone density, muscle fiber distribution within expected parameters for their gravity well, neural processing speed adequate, but not exceptional." The massive form of General Kruvthak shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced seating platform. As one of the few Gorthani to achieve high rank in the Council's military hierarchy, his opinion on combat effectiveness carried significant weight. His species had evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity world, developing incredible strength and tactical thinking. Yet even he found himself puzzled by the human combat reports. "Their individual physical prowess may be unremarkable," the general rumbled, his voice like grinding stone, "but their tactical adaptability is concerning. The Korthak are seasoned raiders, veterans of 1,000 campaigns. They don't simply lose to inferior opponents." Ambassador Lethera of the Chuvana Collective remained silent, her photosynthetic skin slowly shifting from deep green to amber as she processed the discussion. Her people were natural diplomats, capable of detecting subtle emotional currents and hidden motivations in other species. Something about the human situation felt fundamentally different from their usual first contact protocols, though she couldn't quite identify what. The chamber's central holographic display activated, bathing the assembled representatives in blue light as Fleet Admiral Nexuri materialized from the Central Command Hub 3 systems away. The Zethkaran Admiral's 4 eyes tracked across each representative with mechanical precision. "Honored Council members, I've received additional intelligence regarding the human situation that requires immediate discussion." His translated voice carried an unusual tension that caused several representatives to lean forward in their seats. 3 days ago, we made peaceful contact with a human diplomatic vessel near the Proxima Centauri system. The encounter proceeded according to standard first contact protocols. Dr. Yulmesh activated his recording equipment. Were there any unusual readings from their vessel? Unexpected energy signatures or unknown technologies? Negative. Their ship appeared to be exactly what our initial scan suggested, a fusion-powered craft with basic shielding and conventional communication arrays. The humans aboard were cooperative and seemed genuinely interested in establishing formal diplomatic relations. Chancellor Vrina's crystalline form flickered with what her species considered the equivalent of a frown. "Then, what makes this encounter significant enough to warrant an emergency session?" Admiral Nexuri's image gestured, and the central display shifted to show what appeared to be security footage from inside a human starship corridor. The assembled council members watched as a human male walked down a metal corridor, unremarkable in every way except for the massive quadrupedal creature walking calmly beside him. The creature was clearly carnivorous, with forward-facing eyes, powerful jaw muscles, and a predatory gait that spoke of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Its shoulders stood level with the human's waist, and Its muscular frame suggested it could easily overpower most species in the galaxy. Sharp claws clicked against the metal decking with each step. "By the eternal crystalline," whispered Chancellor Vrina, her form briefly flashing bright white in shock. General Kruvthak leaned forward, his massive hands gripping the arms of his chair. "Is that creature restrained? Sedated? Under some form of behavioral control?" "That's the remarkable part," Admiral Nexuri continued. "According to our linguistic analysis team, the human was giving the creature what can only be translated as affectionate commands. Sit, stay good boy." The creature obeyed instantly, without apparent coercion. The recording continued, showing the human scratching behind the creature's ears while it made deep rumbling sounds that the ship's sensors identified as expressions of contentment. Other crew members passed by without concern, some even stopping to interact with the animal themselves. Dr. Yulmesh frantically consulted his databases. No known species maintains predatory fauna aboard their vessels. The risk of injury or death would be astronomical. Even our most advanced behavioral modification techniques couldn't guarantee such control over a creature of that size and, apparent lethality. "There's more," the Admiral said grimly. The display shifted to show external footage of the human ship, where several smaller four-legged creatures could be seen through transparent aluminum viewports, apparently roaming freely through what appear to be recreational areas of the vessel. Ambassador Zethkari felt his breathing apparatus fog with condensation as his respiratory rate increased involuntarily. "They have multiple predatory species aboard a single vessel? This violates every principle of shipboard safety protocols established by the Council over the past 10,000 years." The humans seemed confused when our xenobiologist team expressed concern about the creatures, Admiral Nexuri continued. They referred to them as pets and companions. When pressed for clarification, they explained that these animals live in their homes, share their living spaces, and are considered members of their families. A profound silence fell over the council chamber as the implications of this revelation began to sink in. Species across the galaxy had spent millennia developing sophisticated survival strategies based on avoiding predators, creating safe environments, and maintaining careful boundaries between themselves and dangerous wildlife. Chancellor Vrina was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "If they willingly cohabitate with apex predators as a matter of course, what does this suggest about their own predatory nature?" General Kruvthak stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. His people were warriors, evolved from hunters, but even they maintained strict separation between civilized space and the dangerous fauna of their homeworld. It explains their combat effectiveness. A species that lives in daily proximity to creatures capable of killing them would develop reflexes, tactical thinking, and stress responses far beyond what we initially calculated. Dr. Yulmesh pulled up additional data on his workstation. "I'm reviewing the initial biological scans again with this new context. Their elevated adrenaline baseline, increased neural pathway density in regions associated with threat assessment, muscular tension patterns indicating constant readiness for physical confrontation. We initially attributed these to primitive evolutionary holdovers. But if they're maintaining active relationships with creatures their own biology recognizes as threats," Ambassador Zethkari said slowly, "then these aren't primitive holdovers. These are active, daily maintained survival adaptations." The holographic admiral nodded grimly. "Our cultural analysts believe this explains several puzzling aspects of their initial military encounters. The Korthak reported that human defenders seemed to anticipate attacks from directions that should have been impossible to predict. They moved through combat zones with what appeared to be supernatural awareness of potential threats." Ambassador Lethera finally spoke, her skin now cycling through several different colors in rapid succession. "They're not just comfortable with danger. They've weaponized their relationship with it. They've turned proximity to death into a survival advantage." The chamber fell silent again as each representative contemplated the implications of a species that had somehow evolved beyond the fundamental survival imperative to avoid predation. Instead of developing technology or social structures to separate themselves from dangerous creatures, humans had apparently chosen to live alongside them, to understand them, to form emotional bonds with them. "There's one more detail," Admiral Nexuri said, his four eyes focusing directly on General Kruvthak. "When our team asked about the largest predatory creature they maintain relationships with, the human captain seemed puzzled by the question. He explained that the animals aboard his ship were actually among the smallest and most docile members of their species. He showed our representatives recordings from their homeworld of humans interacting with creatures that our analysts classify as capable of threatening armored vehicles. General crew Thacks' combat-hardened composure cracked visibly. Larger predators? More dangerous than what we've already seen. The recordings show humans swimming in the same waters as creatures 20 meters in length with jaws capable of crushing shuttlecraft hulls. They document humans tracking and following land-based predators that outweigh our heaviest battlesuits. Most disturbing of all, they show humans deliberately seeking out these encounters for what they term recreation. Dr. Yulmesh's hands shook as he attempted to process this information. His people had spent millennia studying predator-prey relationships across the galaxy, developing comprehensive models for how intelligent species interact with dangerous fauna. Nothing in their research had prepared them for the possibility of apex predators becoming voluntary companions. We need to reconsider our entire threat assessment protocol, Chancellor Vrina said, her crystalline form now rapidly shifting between colors as her people's equivalent of panic response is activated. A species that voluntarily cohabitates with creatures capable of killing them represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of intelligent behavior. Ambassador Zethkari activated his personal communication array. I'm recommending that all Council military assets in human-adjacent space be placed on high alert. Not because of immediate hostile intent, but because our threat prediction models are clearly inadequate for assessing their capabilities. The meeting continued for several more hours as representatives struggled to process the revelation that somewhere in the galaxy, a species had evolved not just to survive alongside apex predators, but to form emotional bonds with them, to trust them, to welcome them into their most intimate living spaces. As the session finally adjourned, each representative left with the same uncomfortable realization. They had been thinking about humans as just another species to be cataloged and understood through familiar frameworks. The truth was far more unsettling. Humans represented something entirely new in the galaxy's complex ecosystem of intelligent life. A species that had somehow turned one of evolution's most fundamental survival challenges into a source of companionship and strength. The implications of this discovery would reshape diplomatic, military, and scientific thinking across dozens of star systems. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the growing realization that if humans were comfortable living with creatures that could kill them, what did that suggest about what they themselves were capable of? The answer to that question would prove more terrifying than any of them could have imagined. Captain Sarah Chan walked through the corridors of the UES Harmony with her usual confident stride, completely unaware that her daily routine was currently being analyzed by xenobiologists across 3 star systems. At her side, Zeus padded along on massive paws, his German shepherd heritage evident in every alert movement of his ears and intelligent gleam in his dark eyes. The Harmony was humanity's first dedicated diplomatic vessel, designed specifically for first contact scenarios and interstellar negotiations. Its crew of 200 had volunteered for what was considered the most important mission in human history, establishing formal relations with the Galactic Council and proving that Earth deserved a seat among the stars. "Morning, Captain," called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the hydroponics bay, where she was tending to the ship's fresh food production systems. Beside her, a sleek black cat named Nova stretched lazily in a patch of artificial sunlight. "Zeus looks like he's ready for his inspection rounds." Sarah smiled, scratching behind Zeus's ears. The motion was automatic, bred from years of partnership between human and canine that stretched back through millennia of shared evolution. "He takes his security duties very seriously. Don't you, big guy?" Zeus's tail wagged once, a controlled movement that spoke of professional discipline tempered by unmistakable affection. To the human crew, this interaction was so normal it barely registered. They had all grown up with companion animals, had all experienced the unique bond between human and domesticated predator. The idea that other species might find this relationship unusual or even terrifying simply hadn't occurred to them. Dr. James Park, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from his workstation as Sarah passed his laboratory. "The Veltar delegation wants to schedule another cultural exchange session. They seem particularly interested in our animal protocols." He made air quotes around the last 2 words, his expression puzzled. "Animal protocols?" Sarah paused, Zeus automatically sitting at her side in perfect heel position. What kind of protocols are they expecting? That's just it. I'm not sure. Their translator keeps asking about containment procedures, behavioral suppression methods, and emergency termination protocols. When I explain that we don't have any of those things, they seem to think I'm not understanding the question. Sarah frowned, her tactical mind beginning to work through the implications. As a former Marine Corps officer, she had led men and women through 3 separate colonial conflicts before being selected for the diplomatic corps. Her ability to read situations and assess potential threats was legendary among her peers. They're worried about our animals? More than worried. Yesterday, Ambassador Zeth Carey asked if Zeus was a contained biological weapon and whether we had neutralization protocols in case he reverted to base programming. Dr. Park pulled up the conversation transcript on his display. When I told him that Zeus's base programming is to protect and serve humans, the ambassador's breathing apparatus started fogging up so badly he had to excuse himself. Zeus looked up at the mention of his name, tongue lolling out in what humans recognized as a relaxed, happy expression. His eyes tracked between Sarah and Dr. Park with the alert intelligence that had made his species invaluable partners for thousands of years. Sarah knelt down to Zeus's level, running her hands through his thick coat. The gesture was intimate, trusting, completely at odds with everything the alien delegates understood about predator-prey relationships. What's so hard to understand? He's my partner, my friend, my family. That's exactly what they can't comprehend, Dr. Park said softly. I've been researching their various species' relationships with dangerous fauna. The Veltar maintain elaborate barrier systems to keep predators away from their population centers. The Silthrani use sonic deterrents and electromagnetic fields. The Gorthani, even though they evolved from pack hunters themselves, only interact with dangerous animals through heavily armored intermediaries. The implications began to dawn on Sarah as she considered the alien perspective. They see Zeus as a wolf, a hunter, a killer. Worse than that, they see him as a creature capable of killing them who chooses not to because you've somehow convinced him not to. From her perspective, you're living with a loaded weapon that thinks for itself. Sarah stood, her hand unconsciously moving to rest on Zeus's head. The contact was reassuring to both of them, a physical connection that spoke of trust built over generations. But that's not what he is, isn't it? Dr. Park pulled up a holographic display showing comparative bite force measurements. Zeus's jaw can exert over 230 pounds of pressure per square inch. That's enough to crush bones in most of the species we've encountered. His top running speed exceeds 30 miles per hour, faster than most aliens can move even in their powered exoskeletons. His hearing range extends well beyond human capability, and his scent detection is approximately 10,000 times more sensitive than ours. Zeus yawned, revealing impressive canine teeth that had evolved for tearing flesh. To Sarah, it was just her dog being sleepy. To alien observers, it was a display of weapons that could end their lives in seconds. The difference, Sarah said slowly, is that we don't see him as a weapon at all. We see him as Zeus, an individual, a personality, a friend who happens to be incredibly capable. That's what terrifies them. They're used to thinking about dangerous creatures in terms of containment and control. The idea that we've built relationships based on mutual respect and affection with creatures that could kill us is so far outside their experience that they literally don't have words for it in their languages. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ensign Martinez, who was accompanied by a golden retriever named Athena. The dog carried a small messenger bag in her mouth, part of the ship's internal communication system that the crew had implemented more for morale than practical necessity. Daily report delivery, Martinez said cheerfully, unaware that their routine interaction was being recorded and analyzed by council xenobiologists who were struggling to understand how humans maintain discipline while allowing large predators to roam freely through critical ship systems. Athena dropped the bag and sat perfectly, waiting for acknowledgement. Sarah reached into her pocket and produced a small treat, which the dog accepted gently before trotting off to continue her rounds. How many crew members have animal companions aboard? Dr. Park asked, pulling up the ship's manifest. 47. We limited it to smaller species for space considerations and because most of the crew quarters aren't large enough for the bigger dogs. Sarah consulted her personal tablet. Though Chief Engineer Thompson insisted on bringing his cat, Loki, And that turned out to be practical since Loki can fit into maintenance spaces that humans can't access. Dr. Park nodded, making notes. The aliens keep asking me about hierarchical dominant structures. They want to know which human is the alpha that controls all the animals through intimidation and force. Sarah laughed, the sound echoing down the corridor. There is no alpha. There's just partnership. Zeus doesn't obey me because he's afraid of me or because I've dominated him. He works with me because we're a team. We're family. Try explaining that concept to creatures whose entire survival strategy is based on avoiding anything that might pose a threat. As if summoned by their conversation, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Chun to the bridge. We have an incoming priority transmission from the Galactic Council. Sarah made her way to the command center, Zeus following at her side with the easy confidence of a creature completely comfortable in his environment. The bridge crew barely glanced at the large German shepherd as he took his usual position near the captain's chair, a behavior that would have caused panic evacuations on ships belonging to most other species. The main view screen activated, displaying the crystalline form of Chancellor Vrina. Even through the translation matrix, her distress was clearly visible in the rapid color fluctuations across her semi-transparent body. Captain Chun, thank you for responding so quickly. We need to discuss what your people call pets with some urgency. Sarah settled into her command chair, Zeus lying down beside her with his head up and alert. Of course, Chancellor. What specific aspects of our companion animals would you like to know about? We need to understand the scope of this relationship. How many of these predatory creatures do humans typically maintain in their living spaces? Sarah considered the question carefully. That varies considerably by individual preference and living situation. In urban environments, it's common for families to have 1 or 2 companion animals. In rural settings, the numbers might be higher depending on available space and specific needs. The Chancellor's color fluctuations intensified. When you say families, you mean these creatures live in the same structures as your young. Your offspring are exposed to these predators during their development. Absolutely. Studies show that children who grow up with pets develop stronger immune systems, better social skills, and improved emotional regulation. Sarah smiled, remembering her own childhood with a succession of dogs and cats. Many of our companion animals are specifically selected for their protective instincts toward children. The Chancellor appeared to be consulting with other council members off-screen. When she returned her attention to Sarah, her voice carried a note of barely controlled panic. Captain, we need you to understand that what you're describing is completely without precedent in our experience. No known intelligent species voluntarily cohabitates with creatures capable of causing them harm. But they're not harmful, Sarah protested. They're domesticated, bred for thousands of generations to be compatible with human society. Captain, the Chancellor said slowly, our analysis indicates that even your smallest pets possess physical capabilities that exceed the defensive capabilities of most council species. The creature beside you right now could, according to our calculations, eliminate a Veltar delegation in less than 30 seconds. Sarah looked down at Zeus, who was watching the conversation with intelligent eyes. Zeus? He wouldn't hurt anyone unless they were threatening me or the crew. That's precisely what concerns us. You're describing a creature whose primary loyalty is to you personally, whose protective instincts are triggered by perceived threats to your well-being, and whose physical capabilities make him a walking weapon system. From our perspective, every human is accompanied by a personal guard creature with the training and capability of an elite soldier. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Lisa Morrison, the ship's chief medical officer, who entered the bridge carrying a small beagle named Watson. The dog wore a custom vest indicating his status as a medical support animal, trained to detect certain health conditions in humans through scent analysis. Sorry to interrupt, Captain, but Watson's indicating that Lieutenant Burke has elevated stress hormones again. I want to check if there were any recent incidents that might have triggered his PTSD. Sarah nodded, making a mental note to follow up with Burke privately. Thank you, Doctor. Please continue monitoring. As Dr. Morrison left the bridge, Sarah noticed the Chancellor's form had shifted to what appeared to be a state of complete shock. Chancellor, is everything all right? Captain, did I understand correctly that you're using predatory creatures to provide medical support? They can detect health conditions in your people. Watson is specially trained for that purpose, yes. His sense of smell is sensitive enough to detect chemical changes that indicate various medical conditions. He's prevented several potential emergencies by alerting medical staff to problems before they became critical. The Chancellor's voice dropped to a whisper. You've weaponized predators to monitor your own biological functions? Sarah began to understand the fundamental disconnect in their communication. Chancellor, I think there might be a basic misunderstanding about what these animals represent to us. They're not weapons or tools. They're our friends, our family. They choose to help us because they care about us, and we care about them. Choice, the Chancellor repeated. You're saying these creatures make independent decisions about their behavior? Of course. Zeus could leave anytime he wanted to. So could all the animals aboard this ship. They stay because they want to be here because this is their home and we're their family. A long silence followed this statement as the Chancellor consulted with what appeared to be a large number of council members off-screen. When she returned, her tone had shifted to something approaching awe. Captain Shun, we need to schedule a comprehensive cultural exchange. The Council needs to understand this relationship more completely. What you're describing challenges fundamental assumptions about predator-prey dynamics, survival strategies, and the nature of intelligence itself. After the transmission ended, Sarah sat in her command chair with Zeus beside her, contemplating the conversation. It had never occurred to her that their bond with their animal companions might seem unusual to other species. To humans, the relationship was so natural, so fundamental to their understanding of life itself, that questioning it would be like questioning the need for air or water. Zeus nudged her hand with his nose, and she absently began scratching behind his ears. Somewhere across the galaxy, alien scientists were probably analyzing that simple gesture, trying to understand how a creature capable of tearing out her throat instead chose to seek her affection. The truth was simultaneously simpler and more profound than any of them could comprehend. Humans had not conquered or controlled their predatory companions. They had simply learned to love them, and in return had been loved back. It was a partnership built not on dominance or fear, but on mutual respect, trust, and the kind of deep emotional connection that could bridge the gap between species. As far as the aliens were concerned, this made humans the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. The research station orbiting Kepler 442c had been transformed into something resembling a fortress rather than a scientific facility. What had begun as a routine xenobiological study of human-animal relationships had evolved into the most comprehensive threat assessment ever undertaken by the Galactic Council. Dr. Yulmesh stood before a holographic display that dominated the station's central laboratory, his six-fingered hands trembling slightly as he manipulated the data streams flowing across the projection. 3 weeks of intensive study had only deepened the mystery of human behavior, while simultaneously revealing capabilities that challenged every assumption the Council had made about this supposedly primitive species. Show me the footage from Earth again, he instructed his research assistant, a young Kethmori named Velthara, whose normally steady demeanor had become increasingly agitated over the past several days. The holographic display shifted to show satellite footage captured by Council observation drones secretly monitoring human activity on their homeworld. The images were crystal clear, showing sprawling human settlements where large predatory creatures moved freely among the bipedal mammals without any apparent restraints or barriers. Focus on the residential district in the North American continent, Dr. Yulmesh directed. The view zoomed in to show individual human dwellings, each surrounded by small territories marked by primitive barriers that wouldn't stop a determined predator for more than seconds. Yet within these vulnerable spaces, the footage revealed scene after impossible scene of humans living in intimate proximity with creatures their own biology should have taught them to fear. A human child, no more than 5 standard years old, sat in an open space behind a dwelling while a massive 4-legged predator lay beside her. The creature outweighed the child by at least 5-to-1, possessed jaw musculature capable of crushing her skull with minimal effort, yet remained motionless as she used its body as a backrest while manipulating primitive learning devices. Freeze that image, Dr. Yulmesh commanded, his voice barely steady. Enhance the biological indicators. The display revealed details that made Velthara's respiratory passages flutter with anxiety. The predator's eyes were open and alert, tracking movement throughout the surrounding area with the constant vigilance of an apex hunter. Its musculature showed the coiled readiness of a creature prepared to explode into motion at a moment's notice. This was not a sedated or constrained animal. It was a fully capable predator maintaining a state of active alertness while in direct contact with one of the most vulnerable members of human society. The child shows no indicators of fear or stress, Velthera observed, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. Her body language suggests complete comfort and trust. Continue monitoring, Dr. Yilmaz instructed. The footage showed the child eventually standing and moving toward the dwelling structure. Without any apparent command or coercion, the massive predator rose smoothly to its feet and followed, maintaining a precise distance that kept the child within range of immediate protection while avoiding any appearance of threatening behavior. "It's guarding her," Velthera whispered. "The creature is actively protecting the human child." "Not just protecting," Dr. Yilmaz corrected grimly. "Watch the positioning. The animal is maintaining tactical awareness of all potential approach vectors while ensuring its body could interpose between the child and any threat within milliseconds. That's not instinctive behavior. That's trained, deliberate strategy." The implications of this observation sent ripples of unease through both researchers. Military tacticians across the galaxy spent years learning to assess terrain, predict enemy movement, and position forces for optimal defensive coverage. This human child's companion was demonstrating the same skills autonomously, apparently motivated by nothing more than affection for a creature it could have easily killed. "Bring up the comparative analysis," Dr. Yilmaz requested. The display shifted to show a side-by-side comparison of human domestic spaces and typical residential areas from 12 different council species. The contrast was stark and immediately obvious. Every other intelligent race had designed their living spaces around the principle of excluding dangerous creatures. Barriers, deterrent systems, monitored approaches, and emergency shelters were universal features of civilized architecture across the galaxy. Human settlements, by contrast, seem to have been designed specifically to accommodate large predators. Open spaces suitable for running, elevated platforms for climbing, and integrated feeding stations were common features. Rather than excluding dangerous animals, humans had modified their environment to welcome them. "It's not domestication as we understand the concept," Dr. Yilmaz said slowly. "They haven't bred these creatures to be smaller, weaker, or less capable. If anything, they appear to have enhanced their natural abilities." Velthera pulled up genetic analysis data from samples secretly collected during the human diplomatic mission. The canine specimens show selective breeding for increased intelligence, enhanced sensory capabilities, and improved physical conditioning. They're not diminished versions of wild predators. They're optimized versions. Optimized for what purpose? Partnership. Every genetic modification appears designed to enhance the animal's ability to work cooperatively with humans while maintaining or improving their natural capabilities. Dr. Yilmaz felt his academic worldview crumbling as he processed this information. The fundamental assumption underlying all council xenobiology was that intelligent species survived by becoming less vulnerable to predation. They developed tools, technology, and social structures that created safe spaces isolated from natural threats. Humans had apparently taken the opposite approach. Rather than seeking safety through separation, they had sought strength through integration. They had deliberately maintained relationships with creatures that could kill them, betting their species' survival on their ability to earn the loyalty and cooperation of apex predators. "Show me the combat footage again," Dr. Yilmaz requested. The display shifted to recordings captured during the Korthak raids on human colony ships. The images were difficult to watch, even for researchers accustomed to studying predatory behavior. Human defenders moved through combat zones with their animal companions, the two species functioning as integrated tactical units. A human soldier advanced through a corridor, while a large canine creature scouted ahead, its enhanced sensory capabilities detecting threats beyond human perception. When hostile forces appeared, the animal didn't flee or hide. It attacked with coordinated precision, its movements synchronized with its human partner's tactics. The effective combat capability of these human-animal teams is extraordinary, Velthera observed. The humans provide tool use, ranged weapons, and strategic thinking. The animals provide enhanced senses, speed, and close-quarters capability. Together, they function as a single combat unit with capabilities exceeding either species individually. Dr. Yilmaz nodded grimly. "And this is an emergency cooperation. These partnerships are maintained continuously, from childhood through adulthood. By the time these humans face combat, they've had decades of practice working with their predatory companions. The research station's communication array suddenly activated, displaying the image of Chancellor Vrina. The Silthrani leader's crystalline form was cycling through colors more rapidly than either researcher had ever seen, indicating extreme agitation. Dr. Yolmesh, we've received additional intelligence from the human homeworld that requires immediate analysis. Her voice carried an edge of panic that was completely unlike her species' normal composed demeanor. What new information, Chancellor? Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive gatherings of humans engaged in what they term recreational activities. The gatherings involve thousands of individuals accompanied by their predatory companions, all congregating in open territories for extended periods. Dr. Yolmesh felt his heart skip a beat. Gatherings of thousands? With their animal companions. Show him the footage from a North American continent, grid reference 7743, the Chancellor instructed. The holographic display shifted to show an enormous open area where thousands of humans had assembled with an equally large number of animal companions. The scene appeared chaotic to alien observers, with predatory creatures running freely among human crowds. But closer analysis revealed sophisticated organizational structures. Humans were engaged in what appeared to be competitive activities involving their animal companions. The creatures were demonstrating remarkable athletic abilities, jumping over barriers, navigating complex obstacle courses, and performing coordinated movements with their human partners that required extraordinary mutual trust and communication. They're celebrating their partnership with these creatures, Velthara breathed. This isn't just cohabitation, it's cultural integration at the highest level. Focus on the competitive events, Dr. Yolmesh requested. The display zoomed in on one area where humans and their animal companions were engaged in what could only be described as combat simulations. The exercises require the animals to apprehend and restrain simulated threats while their human partners coordinated tactical responses. But the most disturbing aspect was the clear enjoyment both species were displaying. The humans were celebrating their companions' predatory skills, encouraging them to demonstrate their hunting abilities, rewarding them for successful displays of control violence. They're training for war, the Chancellor said quietly. This entire gathering is a celebration of the military capabilities of human-predator partnerships. Dr. Yolmesh studied the footage more carefully, noting the precision of the movements, the obvious hours of practice required for such coordination, the celebration of successful completion of what were clearly combat scenarios. No, he said slowly. It's worse than training for war. This is recreation, entertainment. They enjoy working with their predatory companions. They find pleasure in activities that enhance their already formidable combined capabilities. The research station fell silent as the implications of this discovery settled over the assembled scientists. They were not observing a species that had been forced into an uncomfortable alliance with dangerous creatures for survival purposes. They were observing a species that had voluntarily, enthusiastically, and systematically integrated apex predators into every aspect of their civilization because they enjoyed the partnership. There's more, Chancellor Vrina continued. We've identified similar gatherings occurring simultaneously across multiple continents. These events appear to be coordinated, suggesting planet-wide cultural institutions dedicated to celebrating and enhancing human-predator cooperation. How many creatures are we talking about? Velthara asked. Conservative estimates suggest over 800 million predatory animals currently living in direct partnership with humans on their homeworld alone. And that's not including the populations they maintain for agricultural purposes. Dr. Yolmesh's academic composure finally cracked completely. 800 million? They're maintaining a standing army of nearly 1 billion trained predators. That's not the worst part, the Chancellor said quietly. According to intercepted communication, these gatherings are considered minor, local events. They refer to much larger competitions as the real thing, suggesting that what we've observed represents only a small sample of their actual capabilities. The holographic display shifted again, showing footage of human children, some barely past infancy, being carried on the backs of creatures that Council military specialists would classify as assault-capable predators. The children showed no fear, instead displaying obvious delight at the experience. They're conditioning their young from birth to see partnership with apex predators as normal, desirable, and enjoyable, Dr. Yelmesh observed. By the time these children reach maturity, working with lethal predators will be as natural to them as breathing. Belthera pulled up demographic projections. If current trends continue, within 50 standard years, the human population will exceed 10 billion individuals, with predatory companion populations scaling proportionally. 10 billion humans, each partnered with creatures capable of eliminating most Council security forces, the Chancellor said. And all of them trained from childhood to see this partnership as the normal state of existence. Dr. Yelmesh began to understand why the Council had moved to treat humanity as a potential existential threat. This wasn't just a species that happened to be more effective in combat than expected. This was a species that had weaponized the fundamental force that had driven evolution for millions of years: the relationship between predator and prey. By choosing to partner with rather than hide from their planet's apex predators, humans had essentially convinced evolution's most effective killing machines to work for them. Every human wasn't just an individual threat. They were a force multiplier capable of coordinating with creatures specifically evolved to hunt, kill, and survive. We need to understand their intentions, Chancellor Vrina said finally. Are they planning expansion? Conquest? Do they see other species as potential threats to be eliminated or potential partners to be integrated? Dr. Yelmesh looked at the continuing footage of humans celebrating with their predatory companions, noting the obvious joy and affection in every interaction. These creatures didn't fear death. They had made friends with it, domesticated it, turned it into a source of strength and companionship. The question wasn't whether humanity represented a threat to the established galactic order. The question was whether anyone could stand against them if they decided the galaxy needed to be reorganized according to their unique perspective on survival and partnership. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in continuous operation for 72 standard hours, with representatives from 47 different species arriving to address what many were already calling the greatest threat to galactic stability in recorded history. The massive chamber had been reconfigured to accommodate delegates whose homeworlds were scattered across nearly a quarter of the galaxy, all united by a growing sense of existential dread. General Thak stood at the center of the assembly, his massive Gorthani frame casting shadows across the crystalline floor as he presented the military analysis that had been compiled over the past month of intensive study. His people were among the galaxy's most respected strategic minds, having successfully defended against 17 separate invasion attempts over the past millennium. His assessment carried weight that could not be ignored. Honored delegates, the situation is more severe than any of our initial projections suggested, the general began, his voice carrying across the chamber without need for amplification. We are not dealing with a conventionally threatening species. We are confronting an entirely new paradigm of intelligent development. The holographic display behind him activated, showing comparative combat effectiveness analyses that had required the combined processing power of 7 different Council research facilities to compile. The data was presented in stark, undeniable mathematics that told a story more frightening than any military intelligence report in Council history. A single human-companion partnership demonstrates combat effectiveness equivalent to a squad of our most elite soldiers, General Thak continued. Their animal companions provide sensory capabilities that exceed our most advanced detection equipment, physical performance that rivals our mechanical enhancement suits, and tactical adaptability that our strategists describe as supernatural. Ambassador Korvani of the Helix Consortium, whose people had survived for millennia through superior technology and careful resource management, activated his translation matrix. General, surely you're not suggesting that primitive animals pose a threat to advanced military hardware. Ambassador, these creatures are not primitive. Our analysis indicates selective breeding programs extending back thousands of years, specifically designed to optimize combat performance while maintaining tractability and loyalty. The general gestured, and the display shifted to show detailed biological scans of various human companion animals. This specimen, classified as a German Shepherd by human designation, demonstrates bite force sufficient to penetrate standard Council armor plating. Its running speed exceeds 48 kilometers per hour, and its sensory capabilities include threat detection at ranges exceeding 2 kilometers. Its estimated combat lifespan in urban warfare scenarios is 27 minutes against standard Council infantry. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs as delegates processed the implications of a creature that could potentially eliminate an entire patrol unit before reinforcements could arrive. But that's not the most concerning aspect, General Thak continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. The most concerning aspect is that this represents one of their smaller, more docile companion species. We have documented evidence of humans maintaining partnerships with creatures that our military specialists classify as capable of engaging armored vehicles. The display shifted again, showing footage captured by long-range surveillance drones of humans interacting with massive quadrupedal creatures that Council military engineers estimated could physically overturn their standard reconnaissance vehicles. Ambassador Veltrani of the Crystalline Dominion, her form shifting through colors that indicated deep anxiety, spoke into the stunned silence. General, are you suggesting that individual humans possess personal armies? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Ambassador. But it's worse than that. These aren't hired soldiers or mechanical constructs that might be reasoned with or corrupted. These are emotional partnerships based on mutual affection and loyalty. The animals don't serve humans out of fear or programming. They serve out of love. Dr. Yilmash, who had been monitoring the proceedings from his research station, materialized as a holographic presence in the chamber. His normally composed demeanor had been replaced by something approaching panic. General, if I may supplement your analysis with our latest cultural findings, Dr. Yilmash said, his six-fingered hands gesturing rapidly. We have discovered that humans maintain not only combat-capable predators, but also creatures specifically bred for threat detection, medical support, psychological therapy, and environmental monitoring. The assembled delegates leaned forward as the implications of this revelation began to sink in. They have created a comprehensive support ecosystem using apex predators, Dr. Yilmash continued. Creatures capable of detecting diseases before symptoms appear, animals that can identify and neutralize toxic substances, companions trained to provide emotional stability during psychological trauma. They have weaponized predatory evolution to create the most sophisticated personal protection and support network ever documented. Chancellor Vrina's crystalline form was now cycling through colors so rapidly that her emotional state was impossible to read. Dr. Yilmash, are you saying that every human is accompanied by a personalized threat assessment and response team? Worse than that, Chancellor. We've documented instances of individual humans maintaining partnerships with multiple animals simultaneously, each optimized for different capabilities. A single human might be accompanied by creatures specialized for tracking, others for physical protection, others for medical monitoring, and still others for psychological support. The chamber fell into profound silence as each delegate contemplated the military implications of species where every individual civilian was protected by what amounted to a specialized tactical squad. Admiral Thexori of the Void Runners, whose people had spent centuries perfecting hit-and-run tactics against superior forces, spoke for the first time. What about their spacecraft? Our initial intelligence suggested primitive fusion propulsion and basic defensive systems. General Thak nodded grimly. That assessment was accurate for their mechanical systems. However, we failed to account for their biological components. Every human vessel operates with full complement of companion animals providing services that we achieve through technological means. The display shifted to show internal footage of human starships, revealing corridors and chambers filled with animals performing various tasks that would normally require sophisticated electronic systems. This creature, General Thak indicated a sleek feline moving through what appeared to be a maintenance corridor, can access and inspect ship systems in spaces too small for human technicians. Its sensory capabilities can detect structural weaknesses, atmospheric leaks, and system malfunctions that would require multiple mechanical sensors to identify. Ambassador Zethkari, who had been silent throughout the presentation, finally activated his translator. General, are you suggesting that human ships are more survivable than our own despite inferior technology because they use living creatures as integrated system components? I'm stating it as confirmed fact, Ambassador. A human vessel with critical system damage that would leave one of our ships dead in space can continue operating because their animal companions can perform repairs and system monitoring that our crews would require extensive mechanical support to accomplish. Dr. Yilmash gestured for attention. There's another aspect we haven't discussed. the psychological profile of a species that chooses to live in constant proximity to creatures capable of killing them. The chamber's attention focused on the xenobiologist as he prepared to deliver what many would later consider the most disturbing assessment of the entire session. Humans don't just tolerate danger, they seek it out. They find comfort in proximity to lethal capability. They derive pleasure from activities that test their ability to work with predatory partners in life-threatening situations. The display showed footage of various human recreational activities involving their animal companions. This suggests a psychological profile completely unlike anything in our experience. They are not risk-averse. They are not survival-focused in ways we understand. They appear to define successful living as the ability to thrive in dangerous environments alongside dangerous partners. Ambassador Morthek of the Pacifist Alliance, whose people had achieved galactic prominence through advanced conflict resolution techniques, spoke with obvious distress. Dr. Yilmaz, how do we negotiate with a species that doesn't seek safety? How do we find common ground with beings who voluntarily surround themselves with death? That's the question that terrifies me most, Dr. Yilmaz admitted. Our entire diplomatic framework is built on the assumption that all intelligent species share fundamental survival drives. We offer security, resources, protection from threats. But humans have already achieved a level of personal security through their partnerships that exceeds anything we could offer them. General Thak stepped forward again, which brings us to the ultimate strategic question. If humans don't need what we traditionally offer in diplomatic relations, what do they want? What are their goals? What drives a species that has already achieved perfect partnership with death itself? The question hung in the chamber like a toxic cloud as each delegate contemplated the implications. Every previous first contact situation had been negotiable because every species had wanted something: safety, resources, technology, territory. But what do you offer to beings who had already achieved the ultimate evolutionary success of converting their predators into their protectors? Chancellor Vrina's form finally stabilized into a deep purple that indicated profound contemplation among her people. We need direct intelligence on human intentions. General, what are our options for gathering additional information without revealing our concerns? Limited, Chancellor. Their animal companions make covert surveillance extremely difficult. Our best detection equipment is inferior to their biological systems. Any attempt to gather intelligence would likely be detected immediately. What about diplomatic channels? Can we simply ask them directly? Admiral Thexori's translated laughter was devoid of humor. Ask them what exactly? Excuse us, but we're terrified that your pet army might decide to conquer the galaxy. That's hardly a foundation for productive diplomatic relations. Dr. Yilmaz pulled up additional data on his workstation. I've been analyzing their cultural communications, and there's something else we need to consider. They appear to be actively seeking to understand us as well. Their questions during diplomatic exchanges consistently focus on our defensive capabilities, our threat assessment procedures, and our survival strategies. They're studying us, General Thak said slowly, just as we're studying them. But from their perspective, we must appear incredibly vulnerable, Ambassador Veltrani observed. They see species that live in constant fear of predation, that require technological assistance for basic survival tasks, that maintain elaborate defensive systems to protect ourselves from the natural world. The implications of this revelation created a new layer of anxiety in the chamber. If humans were studying council species and finding them defensively inadequate, what were their intentions? Were they planning conquest, protection, or something else entirely? There's one more consideration, Dr. Yilmaz said quietly. Based on our analysis of their cultural patterns, humans appear to form emotional attachments very easily. They bond not only with their predatory companions, but with each other, with their environments, even with their technological systems. What does that suggest about their potential interactions with other species? Chancellor Vrina asked. Two possibilities, Dr. Yilmaz replied. Either they will attempt to form similar emotional partnerships with us, treating other intelligent species as potential family members to be protected and cherished, or they will see us as threats to the companions and environments they already love, General Thak finished grimly, and respond accordingly. The chamber fell into another prolonged silence as delegates contemplated a future where their survival might depend on earning the affection of a species that had already convinced apex predators to love them enough to die for them. The mathematics of such a relationship were stark and terrifying. Humans had achieved evolutionary success by making themselves worthy of love from creatures capable of destroying them. The question facing the Galactic Council was whether they could do the same, and whether they could do it before humanity decided their worthiness had already been tested and found wanting. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of the UES Harmony, watching through the transparent aluminum viewport as the largest gathering of alien vessels in recorded history assembled around the neutral station. 47 different species had sent their most advanced diplomatic and military ships, creating a fleet that represented the combined might of the Galactic Council. Zeus sat beside her, his intelligent eyes tracking the movement of alien craft with the alert attention that had made his partnership with Sarah so effective over their 5 years together. To him, this was simply another new environment to assess and understand, another situation where his job was to support his human companion while remaining ready for whatever challenges might arise. "They're scared of us," Sarah said quietly, scratching behind Zeus's ears in the automatic gesture that had become second nature over years of partnership. Not angry, not hostile, genuinely terrified. Dr. Park approached from the communications station, his expression troubled. The formal invitation just came through. They want to conduct what they're calling a comprehensive cultural exchange aboard their primary research facility. Full diplomatic immunity, complete access to their scientific databases, and what amounts to an unlimited expense account for anything we need. Sarah frowned, her tactical mind immediately recognizing the implications. That's not a diplomatic overture. That's appeasement. They're trying to buy us off. Gets worse. The guest list includes representatives from every major military power in Council space, their top xenobiologists, and what appears to be their entire strategic planning committee. They're not treating this as first contact anymore. They're treating it as threat assessment. Zeus looked up at Sarah, sensing the tension in her voice and body language. His tail wagged once, slowly, not the excited greeting wag of playtime, but the controlled acknowledgement that meant he was ready for whatever she needed from him. "Any word from Earth on how we should handle this?" Sarah asked. "That's the interesting part." Command's response was to send us complete cultural files on every human-animal partnership program currently active on Earth, plus authorization to demonstrate any capabilities we think might be useful for building mutual understanding. Sarah considered this carefully. Earth's leadership had obviously reached the same conclusion she had. The aliens weren't afraid of human technology or military capabilities in the traditional sense. They were afraid of something much more fundamental about humanity itself. "They think we're apex predators," she said slowly, "but they can't figure out why we haven't eaten them yet." The observation deck communication system activated, displaying the image of Chancellor Vrina. The Silthrani leader's crystalline form was cycling through a complex pattern of colors that Sarah's cultural briefings had taught her indicated extreme anxiety combined with forced diplomatic courtesy. "Captain Chun, thank you for accepting our invitation. We have prepared extensive facilities for your delegation and are eager to begin learning more about your people." Sarah nodded professionally. "Chancellor, we appreciate your hospitality. However, I need to address what seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding about human intentions." The Chancellor's color patterns shifted to what Sarah recognized as surprise. "Misunderstanding, Captain? You're treating us as a potential threat. Your fleet positioning, your delegation composition, even the phrasing of your invitation suggests you believe humans pose some form of danger to Council species." A long silence followed this observation. When the Chancellor responded, her voice carried a note of confusion that seemed genuine. "Captain, are we incorrect in this assessment?" Sarah felt Zeus shift beside her as he picked up on her emotional response to the question. His presence was immediately calming, a warm reminder of the partnership that had shaped her entire understanding of strength and loyalty. "Chancellor, let me ask you a question. What do you think Zeus is?" The Chancellor's form flickered as she consulted with advisors off-screen. "Our analysis indicates a predatory creature optimized for combat effectiveness and enhanced through selective breeding for improved capabilities." "You're describing his genetics, not who he is." Sarah knelt down beside Zeus, her hand resting on his head as he looked attentively at the communication screen. "Zeus, say hello." Zeus tilted his head slightly, and let out a single controlled bark, not aggressive or threatening, but clearly directed at the alien on the screen. The Chancellor's color patterns shifted rapidly through what appeared to be panic responses before settling into something resembling stunned amazement. The creature, it responded to your request for communication with a foreign intelligence. He's not a creature, Chancellor. He's my partner, my friend, my family. Sarah's voice carried a warmth that seemed to translate effectively across species barriers. He said hello because I asked him to, and because he understands that you're important to me. Dr. Park stepped into the communication range, accompanied by Watson, the medical support beagle. Chancellor, if I may demonstrate another aspect of our partnerships. Watson immediately moved to Dr. Park's side and sat in perfect position, his attention focused completely on his human companion. Dr. Park made a subtle gesture, and Watson moved to a nearby equipment cabinet, retrieved a specific medical device in his mouth, and returned to deliver it precisely to Dr. Park's hand. Watson just performed a complex task requiring tool recognition, spatial reasoning, and understanding of human needs, Dr. Park explained. But more importantly, he did it because he wanted to help me. The Chancellor's color patterns had shifted to something that Sarah's briefings indicated was deep contemplation. Your animal companions perform complex tasks voluntarily, without coercion or behavioral conditioning. They do it because they love us, Sarah said simply, and we love them. That's the foundation of everything else. The next several hours involved the most unusual cultural exchange in galactic history. The human delegation found themselves essentially giving a presentation on the concept of friendship to species that had never experienced voluntary cooperation with creatures capable of harming them. Sarah demonstrated Zeus's protective instincts by having him respond to simulated threat scenarios, but she also showed the aliens how he sought out physical affection, how he played with improvised toys, how he showed obvious pleasure when praised for successful completion of tasks. Dr. Park walked the aliens through Watson's medical support capabilities, but spent equal time demonstrating how the dog provided emotional comfort during stressful situations, how he seemed to understand human emotional states, and how he actively sought to improve his human companion's well-being. Lieutenant Rodriguez introduced the aliens to Nova, her cat, whose independent personality and obvious affectionate attachment to her human challenged every assumption about predator behavior the Council had developed. But the most profound moment came when Ensign Martinez demonstrated the partnership between humans and larger working animals by sharing recordings from Earth of humans working alongside creatures that the aliens classified as capable of threatening military vehicles. These partnerships aren't about control or dominance, Sarah explained as the recordings showed humans and massive canines working together in search and rescue operations. They're about mutual respect, trust, and shared purpose. These animals choose to risk their lives to save strangers because their human partners have asked them to, and because they understand that helping humans means protecting something they care about. Chancellor Vrina's form had stabilized into colors that indicated deep thought. Captain, are you suggesting that your entire species has achieved emotional partnerships with creatures genetically designed for predation? Not just achieved, we've been developing these partnerships for thousands of years. We've bred them not to be less dangerous, but to be more capable of working with us. We've made them better at being what they naturally are, while teaching them to use those capabilities in service of shared goals. And what the Chancellor asked slowly, are those shared goals? Sarah smiled, the expression carrying warmth that seemed to translate effectively across species barriers. The same goals every intelligent species should have. Taking care of each other, protecting those who can't protect themselves, building something better than what we started with. General Kruvthak's image appeared in a secondary communication window, his massive frame somehow managing to convey uncertainty despite his intimidating appearance. Captain, our analysis suggests your species possesses military capabilities far exceeding our initial assessments. What are your intentions regarding Council space? General, let me answer that with another demonstration. Sarah gestured to Zeus, who immediately stood and moved to her side. Zeus, who's a good boy? Zeus's tail began wagging enthusiastically, and he looked up at Sarah with obvious adoration. The most dangerous creature on this ship, Sarah continued, responds to praise and affection. He wants to be told he's done well. He wants to be loved. That's what motivates him. not fear or dominance or territorial ambition. She looked directly into the communication array. General, humans don't want to conquer council space. We want to be part of it. We want to share what we've learned about partnership and cooperation. We want to help build something better than what exists now. And if council species are unable or unwilling to accept your partnership, General Thak asked. Sarah's expression grew serious, and Zeus seemed to sense the shift in her emotional state, moving closer to her side. Then, we'll be disappointed, but we'll respect your choice. We don't force friendship, General. We offer it, but we also protect what we care about. The implications of this statement settled over the alien delegation like a wave. Humans weren't threatening conquest or domination. They were offering partnership while making it clear that they would defend themselves and their allies with the same intensity their animal companions showed in protecting them. Dr. Yelmesh appeared in another communication window, his six-fingered hands gesturing rapidly. Captain, you're describing a social structure based on voluntary emotional cooperation. How do you maintain order? How do you resolve conflicts? The same way Zeus and I resolve our disagreements, Sarah replied. We communicate. We try to understand each other's needs. We find solutions that work for both of us. And when that's not possible, we trust that our underlying relationship is strong enough to survive temporary conflicts. Over the following days, the cultural exchange evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Alien scientists found themselves not just studying human-animal partnerships, but experiencing them firsthand as human crew members patiently introduced them to creatures they had initially feared. The breakthrough came when Chancellor Vrina, after hours of observation, finally asked if she could attempt direct contact with one of the smaller, less intimidating animals aboard the ship. Sarah introduced her to Pip, a therapy rabbit whose gentle nature and obvious intelligence had already charmed several alien observers. The moment when the crystalline chancellor first experienced an animal seeking out her presence for no reason other than social contact marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in galactic relations. For the first time, an alien intelligence experienced the unique trust that forms between species when fear gives way to mutual affection. The final session of the cultural exchange took place with representatives from both species working together in the ship's observation deck, with human-animal partnerships demonstrating the practical applications of interspecies cooperation, while alien observers began to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their willingness to live with dangerous creatures, but their ability to inspire loyalty, trust, and love across species barriers. As the alien fleet prepared to return to their respective homeworlds, Chancellor Vrina made a final communication to Captain Chen. Her crystalline form had settled into colors that Sarah's briefings indicated represented hope and anticipation. Captain, the Council will be voting on humanity's application for full membership within the next standard month. But I want you to know that the vote is really a formality at this point. Any species capable of inspiring the kind of loyalty we've witnessed from your animal companions has already demonstrated the most important qualification for Council membership. What's that, Chancellor? The ability to love something enough to earn love in return. The galaxy has been waiting for someone to teach us that strength doesn't have to come from fear. As the UES Harmony set course for Earth with news of humanity's acceptance into the galactic community, Zeus settled into his favorite spot beside Sarah's command chair, content in the knowledge that his human had successfully introduced their pack to a larger family that stretched across the stars. The day the elder races learned that humans keep apex predators as pets became the day the galaxy learned that love, not fear, is the ultimate evolutionary advantage.